Why do we always feel short of time? Have you ever looked at the clock at the end of a busy day and wondered where all your time went? You started the morning with a plan. You had several things you wanted to finish, and you promised yourself that today would be different. But suddenly it is evening, many tasks are still waiting, and you feel tired without feeling truly productive. This happens to almost everyone. We often say, "I don't have enough time." But the interesting truth is that most people have the same 24 hours in a day. The real difference is not always the amount of time we have, but the way our mind understands, uses, and protects that time. Time management is not simply about making a schedule or writing a long list of tasks. It is also about understanding our habits, emotions, attention, decisions, and the small psychological patterns that quietly control our days. In today's podcast, we are going to explore the hidden psychology behind time management while naturally improving your English through a calm and interesting story. Imagine a young man named Daniel who wakes up one Monday morning with a strong feeling that he needs to change his life. He has many goals. He wants to improve his English, become healthier, read more books, learn new skills, complete his work on time, and spend more meaningful time with his family. He feels excited when he thinks about all these goals because he can imagine a better version of himself in the future. So before getting out of bed, Daniel creates a mental list of everything he wants to accomplish. He tells himself that today he will wake up early, exercise for 30 minutes, study English for 1 hour, finish his important work, read a book, avoid social media, and go to bed early. At that moment, Daniel feels productive even though he has not actually done anything yet. This is an important psychological idea. Sometimes planning gives us the emotional feeling of progress before we have made real progress. The word accomplish means to successfully finish something that you wanted to do. For example, I accomplished my main goal today because I finished my English practice before dinner. Daniel gets out of bed and starts his day, but things do not happen exactly as he imagined. He checks his phone for a few minutes because he wants to see the messages he received overnight. Then he watches one short video. Another video appears, and he watches that one too. He tells himself that he will stop after the next video, but 20 minutes pass before he realizes what has happened. He suddenly feels uncomfortable because he has already lost some of the time he planned to use for studying. Instead of starting immediately, he decides to have breakfast first. While eating, he checks his phone again. After breakfast, he remembers that he needs to answer an email. The email leads to another task, and that task leads to another small decision. By the time Daniel finally sits down to study English, almost 2 hours have disappeared. He opens his notebook, looks at the page, and feels disappointed. Then a thought enters his mind. Maybe I am just not disciplined enough. But Daniel's problem may not be a lack of discipline. His problem may be that he has never learned how his attention works. Attention is the ability to focus your mind on something. Your attention is limited, and every time you move from one activity to another, your brain has to adjust. When you study English while checking messages, watching videos, looking at notifications, and thinking about other responsibilities, your mind is constantly changing direction. You may believe that you are doing many things at the same time, but in reality, you are repeatedly switching between tasks. This is called task switching. It often feels efficient because you are doing several things, but it can make focused work more difficult. Now, imagine that Daniel decides to try something different. Instead of saying, "I will study English for 3 hours today," he tells himself, "For the next 30 minutes, I will only study English." That small change sounds simple, but psychologically it can make a big difference. A huge goal can feel heavy because your brain immediately imagines the effort required. A smaller action feels easier to begin. This is why the beginning of a task is often more difficult than the task itself. Once you start, you may discover that continuing is easier than you expected. The word overwhelming describes something that feels too difficult or too large to manage. You might say, "My workload felt overwhelming, so I divided it into smaller tasks." This idea is important for English learners because learning a language can easily feel overwhelming. You may think you need to learn thousands of words, understand every grammar rule, speak perfectly, improve your pronunciation, and listen to English for hours every day. When you look at everything together, you may lose confidence before you even begin. But what if you changed the way you looked at the goal? Instead of thinking, "I need to become fluent," you could think, "For the next 20 minutes, I will listen to English." Instead of thinking, "I need to learn 1,000 words," you could think, "Today I will learn 5 useful words and use each one in a sentence." The goal becomes smaller, clearer, and easier to start. This is one of the hidden secrets of productivity. Your mind responds differently to a clear action than to a huge ambition. Ambition can inspire you, but action creates progress. You can dream about speaking English confidently, but confidence grows when you actually speak. You can dream about becoming healthier, but your health improves through repeated daily actions. You can dream about becoming successful, but success usually develops through ordinary tasks performed consistently over a long period. Daniel slowly begins to understand this. He realizes that his biggest problem is not that he has too little time. His biggest problem is that he gives his attention to too many things without deciding what deserves it most. This distinction is extremely important. Time is something you receive every day, but attention is something you choose where to place. You may have 2 hours available, but if your attention is scattered, those 2 hours may produce very little. On the other hand, 30 minutes of focused attention can sometimes produce more meaningful progress than several hours of distracted activity. Think about your own day for a moment. When you wake up, what is the first thing you usually give your attention to? Is it your phone, messages, news, social media, work, your family, your thoughts about the future? The first thing you focus on can influence the direction of the next few hours. If you begin your morning by immediately reacting to other people's messages and demands, your mind may enter a reactive state. You are responding to whatever appears in front of you instead of deciding what matters most to you. The word reactive means responding to something after it happens, rather than acting according to your own plan. A person who constantly waits for notifications and responds to every interruption may be living in a reactive way. Now compare that with someone who begins the day by deciding what is important. This person might drink some water, take a short walk, review their priorities, and spend 30 minutes on an important personal goal. Before opening social media or checking unnecessary messages, they are not controlling every minute of their life. They are simply protecting their attention during an important part of the day. This is a powerful difference. And there is another hidden psychological problem that affects time management: instant gratification. Instant gratification means receiving pleasure or satisfaction immediately instead of waiting for a future reward. Your phone is designed to offer many forms of instant gratification. You receive a message, and you feel curious. You see a notification, and you want to check it. You open a social media application, and there is always something new to see. You watch a short video, and another one begins automatically. These activities can provide small moments of pleasure without requiring much effort. Important goals are often different. Learning English may not give you a dramatic reward after 10 minutes. Reading a book may feel quiet compared with watching entertaining videos. Exercise may be uncomfortable before you begin to feel stronger. Saving money may require you to say no to something you want today so that you can have something more valuable later. In other words, many meaningful goals require delayed gratification, which means accepting a smaller reward now because you want a larger reward later. Daniel begins to notice this pattern in his own life. When he has 10 free minutes, he naturally reaches for his phone. When he has 30 minutes available for English, he sometimes feels that studying is too much effort. But when he understands the difference between instant and delayed rewards, he starts making better decisions. He does not completely remove entertainment from his life. Instead, he changes the order. He tells himself, "First, I will complete one important task. Then I can relax without feeling guilty." This simple rule changes the way he feels about relaxation. Before, Daniel often watched videos while thinking about the work he should be doing. He was neither fully working nor fully relaxing. His body was resting, but his mind was carrying the unfinished task in the background. Now, he begins to understand that real rest is more enjoyable when it follows meaningful work. When you know you have completed something important, you can enjoy your free time with a clearer mind. This brings us to another important concept: unfinished tasks. Have you ever tried to relax at night, but suddenly remembered something you forgot to do? Perhaps you needed to send an email, pay a bill, study for an exam, or prepare something for tomorrow. Even though you are sitting comfortably, your mind keeps returning to that unfinished task. Psychologists have studied the way unfinished tasks can remain active in our thoughts. This is one reason writing down your responsibilities can be helpful. When you put a task on paper and decide when you will deal with it, your mind may feel less pressure to keep reminding you. Daniel begins keeping a small notebook beside his desk. Whenever he thinks of something important while studying, he writes it down instead of immediately stopping his study session. If he remembers that he needs to call someone, he writes, "Call tomorrow at 10." If he remembers that he needs to buy something, he writes it on his list. If an idea appears in his mind, he records it and returns to his work. This simple habit helps him protect his attention. The notebook does something else too. It makes his responsibilities visible. Before, all his tasks existed inside his head, where they felt larger and more confusing. Now he can see them clearly. He can separate what is urgent from what is important. This distinction is another key part of time management. Urgent means something needs attention soon, while important means something has significant value or consequences. An urgent message may need a quick response, but improving your English may be more important for your long-term goals. If you spend your entire day responding to urgent things, you may have very little time left for important things. This is why busy people are not always productive people. A person can answer dozens of messages, attend many meetings, make many phone calls, and still make very little progress on the goals that matter most. Busy describes having a lot to do, while productive means producing useful results. These two words are not the same. You can be busy without being productive, and you can be productive without being busy every minute. Daniel starts asking himself a new question whenever he begins his day. Instead of asking, "What can I do today?" he asks, "What is the most valuable thing I can do today?" That question changes his priorities. He realizes that some tasks are small and easy, but do not create much progress. Other tasks are uncomfortable, require concentration, and may take longer, but they move his life forward. This is where time management becomes more than a schedule. It becomes a way of thinking. You do not need to control every minute. You need to understand what deserves your best attention. You need to recognize the habits that quietly steal your time. You need to make important tasks easier to begin. You need to understand that motivation comes and goes, but a good system can continue even when motivation is low. And most importantly, you need to stop measuring your success by how busy you feel and start measuring it by the meaningful progress you make. Daniel is still not perfect. Some days, he wastes time. Some mornings, he wakes up late. Sometimes he spends too long on his phone. Sometimes he creates a plan and does not follow it. But something important has changed. He no longer sees one bad day as proof that he cannot change. He understands that time management is a skill, and skills improve through practice. If he loses 1 hour, he does not say, "The whole day is ruined." Instead, he asks, "What can I do with the next hour?" That question may be one of the most powerful questions you can ask yourself, because you cannot change yesterday. You cannot recover the exact hour you wasted last week. You cannot go back and restart this morning, but you can always decide what to do next. And that is where real-time management begins. The hidden reason we procrastinate. As Daniel continued trying to improve his relationship with time, he discovered something that surprised him. He had always believed that procrastination meant being lazy, but the more he observed his own behavior, the more he understood that procrastination was often connected to emotion. Sometimes we avoid a task not because we do not care about it, but because the task makes us feel uncomfortable. It may feel difficult, boring, confusing, or frightening. We may worry that we will fail, so we delay starting. We may believe that we need to feel motivated before we begin, even though motivation often appears after we take the first step. The word procrastination means delaying something that you need or intend to do, usually by spending time on something easier or more enjoyable. Daniel realized that many times he had not been avoiding work itself. He had been avoiding the uncomfortable feeling connected to the work. One morning, Daniel sat at his desk with an English book in front of him. He had promised himself that he would practice speaking for 30 minutes, but after looking at the book for a few moments, he suddenly remembered that his room needed cleaning. Then he thought about checking his email. After that, he decided that perhaps he should make some coffee before studying. Each reason sounded reasonable by itself, but together they created a pattern. Daniel was finding small excuses to avoid the first difficult moment of beginning. This is something many people experience. When a task feels uncomfortable, the brain naturally looks for an easier alternative. Cleaning the room may not be exciting, but compared with speaking English when you are afraid of making mistakes, it can suddenly feel attractive. Daniel finally understood that procrastination often begins with a very small decision. You tell yourself, "I will do it later." The word later sounds harmless, because it does not mean never. It only means not now. But if you repeat that decision every day, later can quietly become next week, next month, or next year. A person can have a goal for years without taking consistent action toward it. This is why starting is so important. You do not have to finish everything today. You only have to stop postponing the first step. So Daniel tried a new method. Instead of promising to study English for 1 hour, he promised to study for only 5 minutes. He opened his notebook, chose one topic, and started speaking. At first, he felt uncomfortable. His sentences were not perfect, and he forgot some words. But after 5 minutes, something interesting happened. He wanted to continue. 5 minutes became 10 minutes, and 10 minutes became 25. The task had not changed very much, but his emotional response had changed because he was already inside the activity. This is why the beginning is often the hardest part. Before you start, your mind imagines the effort. After you start, the effort becomes real and manageable. This idea can be used for almost anything. If you want to read more, tell yourself you will read 2 pages. If you want to exercise, tell yourself you will move for 5 minutes. If you want to clean your room, choose one small area. If you want to improve your English, listen to a short conversation and repeat a few sentences. The purpose is not to trick yourself forever. The purpose is to reduce the psychological resistance that appears before action. Resistance means the feeling that makes you want to oppose, avoid, or delay something. When resistance is high, make the first step smaller. Daniel also discovered that his environment affected his behavior more than he had expected. When his phone was beside his notebook, he checked it frequently. When his phone was in another room, he thought about it much less. This taught him a simple lesson. Sometimes we do not need stronger willpower. We need a better environment. Willpower means the ability to control your actions and continue doing something even when you do not feel like doing it. Willpower is useful, but it is not unlimited. If you have to fight the same temptation every few minutes, you make your day unnecessarily difficult. It is often easier to remove the temptation than to fight it constantly. Think about a person who wants to eat healthier but keeps snacks on the desk. Every time they see the food, they must make a decision. Should I eat it? Should I wait? Maybe just one piece. After making this decision many times, they become tired. But if the snacks are not directly in front of them, the decision becomes easier. The same principle applies to your phone, television, social media, games, and other distractions. If you want to focus, make distractions slightly harder to access. Daniel began creating what he called a focus environment. Before studying English, he placed his phone away from his desk, closed unnecessary computer tabs, prepared his notebook, filled a glass of water, and decided exactly what he would study. This preparation took only a few minutes, but it reduced the number of decisions he needed to make later. Once he sat down, he did not need to ask, "What should I do?" He already knew. This brings us to another hidden problem with time management: decision fatigue. During the day, we make hundreds of small decisions. What should I eat? What should I wear? Which message should I answer? Should I check my phone? Should I start working now or later? What should I study? Which task should I do first? Each decision may seem small, but together they can make the mind tired. When the mind becomes tired from too many decisions, we may choose the easiest option rather than the most valuable one. That is why routines can be powerful. A routine reduces the number of decisions you need to make. If you always study English at the same time, in the same place, using the same simple process, your brain gradually becomes familiar with that behavior. You do not need to negotiate with yourself every day. You simply follow the routine. Daniel decided that after breakfast, he would spend 30 minutes practicing English. He did not ask himself whether he felt like doing it. It became part of his normal day. At first, the routine felt strange. Some days he wanted to skip it, but after several weeks, something changed. Studying English became less like a special project and more like brushing his teeth. He did not need a huge amount of motivation. It was simply something he did. This is the power of consistency. Consistency means doing something regularly over time. You do not need to make an enormous effort once and then disappear for 2 weeks. Small actions, repeated consistently, can create much stronger results. This is especially important for language learning. Imagine 2 students. The first student studies English for 5 hours on Sunday, but does almost nothing during the rest of the week. The second student studies for 30 minutes every day. After several months, the second student may have developed stronger habits because English has become part of everyday life. The brain receives regular exposure, and the learner has more opportunities to listen, read, speak, and review vocabulary. Daniel began using his daily activities as opportunities to practice English. While walking, he described what he could see. While cooking, he named the ingredients. While traveling, he listened to English conversations. Before going to bed, he wrote a few sentences about his day. He realized that English did not need to be separated from his life. It could become part of his life. This changed his understanding of productivity too. He had once believed that productive people worked constantly. Now he understood that productive people protect their energy as well as their time. If you work for many hours without proper rest, your concentration can become weaker. You may spend another hour at your desk, but produce very little. Rest is not always the opposite of productivity. Good rest can support productivity. Daniel started taking short breaks during focused work. He would study or work for a period of time, Then stand up, stretch, drink water, or walk for a few minutes. During the break, he tried not to replace one form of mental stimulation with another. Instead of immediately opening social media, he allowed his mind to become quiet. This helped him return to his work with greater attention. He also learned an important lesson about sleep. For years, Daniel had treated sleep as something he could sacrifice whenever he was busy. If he had work to finish, he stayed awake late. If he wanted more time for entertainment, he slept later. But eventually he noticed that a tired mind made everything harder. He struggled to concentrate, felt less patient, and made more mistakes. Sleep was not stealing his productive hours. It was helping him use those hours better. This is a powerful shift in thinking. Sometimes we try to create more time by sleeping less, rushing more, and filling every empty moment with activity. But the goal should not be to squeeze every possible minute out of the day. The goal is to use your available time with enough energy and attention to make it meaningful. Daniel began asking another question. What gives me energy, and what takes my energy away? He noticed that some activities made him feel refreshed, while others left him mentally tired. Endless scrolling made him tired. Constant notifications made him restless. Meaningful conversations made him feel connected. Exercise made him feel stronger. Reading made him calm. Learning English made him feel proud when he noticed improvement. This helped him understand the relationship between time and energy. Two people may have the same 24 hours, but they may have very different levels of energy during those hours. Therefore, good time management is also about placing the right tasks at the right time. If Daniel's mind was strongest in the morning, he tried to do difficult work then. He saved simpler tasks for times when his energy was lower. This idea is sometimes called energy management. Instead of asking only, when do I have time? You also ask, when do I have the most energy? If you are naturally focused in the morning, protect that time for important work. If you become more creative in the evening, use that period for creative activities. You do not have to copy someone else's schedule. You need to understand your own rhythm. Daniel also stopped creating unrealistic daily lists. Previously, he would write 10 or 15 tasks on a piece of paper. At the end of the day, he might complete 6 tasks and feel like a failure because 4 were still unfinished. Now, he chooses a smaller number of important tasks. He asks himself what would make the day successful even if everything else remained incomplete. This is the idea of priorities. A priority is something that deserves attention before other things. If everything is a priority, nothing is truly a priority. Daniel learned that 3 meaningful tasks completed with focus could be more valuable than 10 tasks completed carelessly. One of his priorities became English speaking. He wanted to communicate more confidently, but he had always been afraid of making mistakes. He believed that good English speakers never made mistakes. Slowly, he realized that this belief was stopping him from practicing. He began speaking even when his grammar was not perfect. He recorded himself speaking for 2 minutes each day and listened to the recording later. Sometimes he laughed at his mistakes, but instead of feeling embarrassed, he treated them as information. This is another psychological secret. Mistakes can become feedback. Feedback is information that helps you understand how you are performing and how you can improve. If you make a mistake while speaking English, you have discovered something you can work on. A mistake does not have to become a reason to stop. It can become a direction for your next practice session. After several weeks, Daniel noticed that he was not only improving his English, he was becoming more comfortable with discomfort. This was a much bigger change. He realized that many goals require us to feel uncomfortable before we feel successful. Learning a new language can feel uncomfortable. Exercising can feel uncomfortable. Starting a business can feel uncertain. Giving a presentation can feel frightening. Having a difficult conversation can feel stressful. If you always wait until you feel completely comfortable, you may wait forever. The goal is not to remove all discomfort. The goal is to become capable of moving forward while discomfort is present. Daniel remembered the days when he used to say, "I will start when I feel motivated." Now, he understood that motivation was not a reliable schedule. Some days motivation appeared before action. Other days action created motivation. He learned to begin without waiting for the perfect feeling. This is one of the most useful lessons you can apply to your own life. If you are waiting for motivation to learn English, do not wait. Open your notebook. Listen to one short conversation. Repeat one paragraph. Speak for 2 minutes. Read one page. The action itself can create momentum. Momentum means the growing force that makes it easier to continue once you have started. Think about pushing a heavy object. The first push requires the most effort because the object is not moving. Once it begins moving, continuing can become easier. Habits can work in a similar way. Starting a habit requires effort, but after repetition, the behavior becomes more automatic. Daniel's life was not suddenly perfect. He still had difficult days. He still wasted time sometimes. He still opened his phone when he should have been working. He still postponed difficult tasks. But now he recognized these patterns much earlier. Instead of becoming frustrated with himself, he corrected his direction. That is the real goal of time management. It is not to become a perfect machine that uses every minute efficiently. You are a human being, not a machine. You need rest, connection, entertainment, mistakes, quiet moments, and unexpected experiences. Good time management should help you live better, not make you feel guilty every time you relax. And perhaps the most important lesson Daniel learned was that time is connected to values. Values are the principles and things that are important to you. If family is important to you, your schedule should contain time for family. If health matters to you, exercise and rest should have a place in your life. If education matters to you, learning should receive some of your attention. If your English goal matters to you, you should give it regular time instead of only thinking about it. A calendar can show you where your time goes, but your choices show you what you value. So tonight, before you go to sleep, do not ask yourself only, "How busy was I today?" Ask yourself, "Did I spend my time on things that truly matter to me?" The answer may not always be yes, and that is okay. Tomorrow is another opportunity to make a better choice. Because time management is not about controlling time. Time continues moving whether you control it or not. You cannot slow it down, save it in a box, or borrow an hour from tomorrow. What you can control is your attention, your decisions, your habits, and the actions you take while time is passing. And once you understand that, you stop fighting against time and start working with it.